My daughter came home on her wedding night covered in blood. Her mother-in-law had slapped her 40 times, demanding she sign over a condo worth $1.5 million that we had given her. Eyes bloodshot with rage, I called my ex-husband. Your daughter is being abused. At 3 a.m., violent, hurried knocking thundered at the door as if someone was ramming the reinforced steel with their entire body. I was lying on the couch. I had barely managed to doze off for a couple of hours when I was jolted awake. My heart was pounding out of control. Who could it be at this hour? And knocking like that? Before I could even open my mouth to ask, a muffled, familiar and painful sob came from outside. Mom, please open the door. It was my daughter Sarah's voice. I leaped up and ran barefoot to the door. My whole body was trembling as I looked through the peephole. The image I saw almost made me collapse right there. Sarah was standing on the landing, her hair a mess, her wedding dress no longer white, stained with streaks of dark red. On her face, 5 bruised finger marks were clearly imprinted. Her cheek was swollen, her lip was split, and blood was still dripping from the corner of her mouth. My hands were shaking so much that I fumbled with the key several times before I got it in the lock. The moment the door opened, Sarah collapsed onto me. Her body was ice cold, shaking uncontrollably as if she had just stepped out of a freezing storm. Mom, they hit me. She barely finished the sentence before she fainted in my arms, becoming a dead weight. Sarah, Sarah, I screamed, holding her in a panic. As I touched her back, I felt a large, wet patch. I pulled my hand away and saw it was covered in blood. I carried her to the sofa, moving clumsily, my mind a blank slate. My daughter's face was pale, her lips bruised, one of her cheeks terribly swollen, and she could barely open her eyes. Shaking, I picked up the phone to dial 911. Just then, Sarah gripped my hand tightly. Mom, don't call. Don't take me to the hospital. I leaned over her. What do you mean, no? Look at you. How can you bear this? Her voice was weak, broken. They said if I dare go to the hospital, they'll kill me. A lump formed in my throat. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, and tears streamed down her face. My mother-in-law, Carol. Just hearing that name sent a chill down my spine. My daughter swallowed hard, her voice trembling as if she had a high fever. She slapped me 40 times. She demanded I sign over the $1.5 million condo to her, or she'd beat me to death. Hearing this, my ears started ringing, and the room spun. $1.5 million. It was the condo in Sarah's name, the only asset her father left her after our divorce 10 years ago. That condo on New York's Upper East Side, valued at exactly $1.5 million, was the only safety net for my daughter's future. How is that possible, I asked, my voice choked as I cleaned the blood from her face. But wasn't today your wedding day? Sarah broke down, sobbing convulsively. Mom, I was wrong. I didn't listen to you. I thought you were just jealous because I was marrying a rich man. I didn't know I was walking into a lion's den. I held her tight. Sarah spoke slowly with interruptions, but every word was a knife twisting inside me. 3 months ago, she introduced me to her fiancé. His name was Jake, a tall, well-dressed man who drove a luxury car and walked into our home with a radiant smile. Hello, ma'am. You look so young. You could be Sarah's older sister. Sarah beside him smiled so happily her eyes crinkled. See, Mom, Jake treats me so well. At the time, I just smiled politely, but inside I felt a vague unease. His gaze was too sharp. His smile too perfect. The second time Jake came over, he brought his mother Carol, a woman dressed gaudily with a thick gold chain and heavy bracelets on her wrists. As soon as she entered, she scanned the house, not hiding her inquisitive curiosity. I heard your ex-husband is a big shot in real estate, that he left your daughter quite a nest egg, right? Her direct question froze me. I answered coldly, my ex-husband's finances have nothing to do with your family. She smiled, but her smile had no warmth. Honey, I'm just asking out of curiosity. If my son is marrying your daughter, I need to know what kind of world she comes from. Sarah quickly intervened, taking my hand. Mom, she was just asking, don't be upset. In that instant, I looked at my daughter, and she seemed like a stranger. She who had always been so sensible was blinded by love defending a woman she barely knew. Later, Carol brazenly proposed a wedding gift of $200,000 from us. I refused immediately. I'm not selling my daughter. I won't accept that kind of pressure. But Sarah begged me in tears. Mom, Jake's family is very wealthy. $200,000 isn't that much to them. Please just accept it. I eventually gave in, lowering it to $100,000 on the condition that Sarah's condo would not be touched after the marriage. Carol smiled from ear to ear, repeating, of course, whatever the bride's family says. Now looking back, I realize how obvious her greed was. But I wasn't clear-headed enough to see it. Sarah sobbed on my lap. Mom, tonight, after the reception, they took me to our suite. I thought my new life was beginning. Her voice broke. I squeezed her hand, sensing that what I was about to hear would be even more terrible than the wounds on her body. Sarah cried so hard she curled into a ball in my arms. I could feel her tremors transmitting to my chest, as if her fear was devouring me too. Mom, when the party was over, Jake took me to the room. Her voice faded choppy. I moved closer, pressing my ear to hear every word. I thought we were finally alone. I even sat down to wait for him. Sarah took a deep breath, her tears falling on my blouse. But he left, saying he had something to do. I waited for almost half an hour. I closed my eyes, my heart aching, and then what honey I had barely finished the question when Sarah clutched my clothes, her voice shattered. My mother-in-law burst into the room, and behind her were Jake's aunt and other women, 7 or 8 of them in total. A chill ran down my spine. They locked the door. Sarah broke down, crying again. Before I could understand what was happening, Carol grabbed me by the hair and slammed me onto the bed. I couldn't help it. My hands started to shake. She asked me when I was going to sign the $1.5 million condo over to her. Sarah shook her head as she spoke. I told her it was an asset my parents left me, that I couldn't transfer it. As soon as I said that, she slapped me. My daughter choked, unable to breathe. 1, then 2, and on and on. I counted up to 40 slaps. I felt like someone was squeezing my heart. Every time she hit me, the other women would count out loud and laugh. Sarah's voice had become a thread. They said, a disobedient bride needs to be taught a lesson. I clenched my teeth so hard I drew blood. And Jake. Where was he? Sarah was silent for a long time. Her hot tears fell on my hand. He was outside the door. That simple sentence was the deepest stab. I heard him tell his mother, Mom, don't hit her in the face, it'll leave marks and she'll look ugly. I couldn't contain a choked sob. Oh my God. Sarah wept. After that, they didn't hit my face anymore. They used coat hangers, slippers. They beat me on my back, my arms. My daughter was trembling uncontrollably. I begged them. I told them I really couldn't transfer the condo, that it was my mother's and father's whole life. I covered my mouth with my hand, crying uncontrollably. She said if I didn't agree, she would rip my clothes off and throw me into the street for the whole neighborhood to see, saying I was a gold-digging scammer. Carefully, I pulled the blanket to cover Sarah well. The wedding dress was torn down the back, revealing her bruised skin, the marks from the blows so vivid I didn't dare look for long. And how did you escape? Sarah was breathing with difficulty. One of them said it would be bad luck to kill someone on their wedding night, and only then did she stop. My daughter managed a bitter smile. She warned me I had 3 days, only 3 days. If I didn't transfer the condo, she'd let Jake educate me again. I clenched my fists. I was so scared. I secretly put my wedding dress back on and ran. I didn't dare go back to their house. Sarah buried her head in my chest, crying her heart out. Mom, I'm scared. I held her with all my strength. In that moment, my own image from 10 years ago came to mind. Also oppressed by my mother-in-law, also choosing to endure, also telling myself it would all pass. But in the end, the more I endured, the more they cornered me. I stroked my daughter's hair and said in a firm voice, Sarah, listen to me. This cannot be tolerated. She flinched. But if I report it to the police, they'll just say I fell. Their family has lawyers. I looked her straight in the eye. You're scared. I get it. But if you stay silent, they will not stop. I stood up and got a clean towel to dry her face. Tonight you stay here. No one will ever touch you again. Sarah looked at me, her eyes filled with confusion. What are you going to do, Mom? I took a deep breath. In my mind, there was only one person. The man who once hurt me, but also the only one capable of protecting our daughter right now. I picked up the phone to call her father. Sarah's eyes widened. Mom, Dad hasn't contacted us in 10 years. I remained calm. But you are his daughter. I dialed his number. My hand trembled slightly, but my voice, when the call connected, was strangely serene. On the other end, they picked up. Hello. A familiar, raspy voice. I spoke slowly, articulating each word clearly. Alex, your daughter has been beaten half to death. There was a silence of several seconds on the other end of the line. Send me the address. I'm on my way. The call ended brief and concise. I turned to Sarah. This is not going to be swept under the rug. My daughter took my trembling hand, but in her eyes there was something different, as if she had just grabbed onto a lifeline. At this point, I would like to say something from the bottom of my heart to everyone listening to this story. I ask you please to show your support with a like and by subscribing to the channel. I wish you all much health and peace. Your support is the engine that drives me to continue telling these life stories, hoping that each account can help someone become stronger. I went back to the sofa and sat beside my daughter all night. Outside, the wind blew icily through the window cracks, but inside me, a dormant flame had begun to burn. This time, I would not let my daughter repeat the path of suffering I once walked. 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I knew the real storm had just begun. The doorbell rang again, sharp and decisive. I stood up, my heart pounding. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a dark jacket, his hair disheveled, his face haggard from the rush. Though 10 years had passed, I recognized him instantly. It was Alex. I opened the door, and before I could say anything, he strode in. His gaze swept the room and settled on the sofa. Sarah lay there wrapped in a blanket, her face swollen and bruised, her lips mangled a crust of dried blood at the corner of her mouth. Sarah. Alex's voice trembled. He rushed to her side and knelt. His hand reached out, then hovered in the air as if he was afraid to hurt her more by touching her. "Honey, how are you?" Sarah opened her eyes. Seeing her father, she burst into tears. "Dad." With just that one word, Alex's own tears began to fall. I stood behind them, a lump in my throat. 10 years ago, when we divorced, he had also stood like that, silent, powerless. I never imagined he would reappear in a situation like this. Alex turned to me, his eyes bloodshot. What happened? I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and told him everything Sarah had told me. As he listened, his face grew paler. When I mentioned the 40 slaps and the $1.5 million condo, he clenched his fists so tightly his veins stood out. Bastards. He shot up and slammed his hand on the table, making the glass vibrate. What family? Who are they? The family of Jake Wright. They want the condo in Sarah's name, the one on the Upper East Side. Alex immediately pulled out his phone. "Send me that scoundrel's address right now." I hesitated. "What are you going to do?" He looked at me directly, a terrifying coldness in his eyes. "I'm not going to make a scene. I'm going to do things by the book." He turned back to Sarah, his voice softening. "It's okay, honey. Dad's here. No one will ever touch you again." Sarah took his hand, trembling. "I'm scared. They said if I report it to the police." Alex leaned in and squeezed her hand. "Listen to me. With people like this, the more scared you are, the more they attack. This time, I won't let anyone hurt you." He went out onto the balcony and started making calls one after another. I heard snippets. "Yes, Detective Miller, I need you to investigate a family, the Wrights, in real estate." "Yes, in as much detail as possible." Before he hung up, he was already dialing another number. "Laura, I need the best domestic violence and divorce lawyer you know. Can we file a report tomorrow morning?" I watched him inevitably remembering 10 years ago. Back then, facing pressure from his mother and sister, he had chosen silence. Today, for his daughter, he seemed like a different person. Alex came back inside, his voice grave. "You two rest tonight. I'll take care of the rest." I nodded, though I was still uneasy inside. "What if they come looking for her?" He smiled coldly. "Let them come." That smile sent a shiver down my spine. Near dawn, Sarah fell asleep from exhaustion. I sat beside her, unable to close my eyes. My mind kept replaying Carol's furious face, the slaps, the threats. I knew this wouldn't end well. Around 7 a.m. Alex's phone rang. He moved to a corner to answer, his expression darkening. I see. Send me all the documentation." After hanging up, he looked at me. "That family is drowning in debt. Their real estate firm has overdue loans with the bank. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. Sarah's condo was their salvation." I was stunned. He nodded. "They didn't get married for love. They got married to steal." That sentence made me shudder. Just then, shouts came from the street below. I went to the balcony to look. Down on the sidewalk, there was Carol screaming, flanked by Jake and several relatives. "Sarah, you whore, get down here. What a shameless bitch." Her shrill cries made the neighbors start peeking out of their windows. Jake looked up at our balcony. When he saw Alex and me, his face changed color. Alex stepped out and stood firm, looking down with an icy coldness. "Have you made enough of a scene?" Carol snapped her head up. "And who are you?" Alex answered curtly. "I'm Sarah's father." She froze for a second, then let out a mocking laugh. Father. What father? Your daughter tricked my son into marriage, and now she dares to run back to her mother's house. Alex was unfazed. You gave my daughter 40 slaps, and now you have the nerve to come here and talk about morality. Carol turned pale. She's lying, I was just disciplining my daughter-in-law. Alex held up his phone. I have photos of all her injuries saved. If you'd like, we can call the police to clear this up. Jake stepped forward. Sir, this is a family matter. Let's not make it bigger. Alex stared at him. Family. When your mother was hitting your wife, and you were standing outside the door, what kind of family is that? Jake was speechless. Carol started screaming again. If we don't get the $1.5 million condo, you'll never know peace, Alex smiled coldly. Dare to touch my daughter one more time. At that precise moment, the sirens of a police car wailed at the end of the street. 2 vehicles pulled up and several officers got out heading straight for the group. We've received a call about a public disturbance. Carol turned livid. I was just here to talk. An officer looked at her sternly. Screaming and threatening isn't talking. Alex went downstairs and handed his phone to an officer. These are photos of the injuries my daughter sustained last night. The atmosphere changed instantly. Jake backed away, his face as pale as paper. From the balcony I clung to, the railing feeling a mix of fear and relief. I knew that from that moment on, the wheel of fate had begun to turn in a different direction. Sarah woke up and came to my side. She looked down, trembling. Mom, I'm scared. I hugged her. Don't be afraid. This has only just begun. The atmosphere on the street grew tense with the arrival of the police. Carol, who had been screaming non-stop, suddenly fell silent, her mouth open but no sound coming out. Jake behind his mother was ashen, his fists clenched as if trying to stay upright. The relatives who had been cheering them on now stepped back, not daring to make eye contact. An officer looked around and asked in a severe tone, "Who is the assault victim?" Alex turned and called up, "Sarah, come down." I squeezed my daughter's hand. You don't have to go down if you're not ready. Alex nodded and addressed the police again. My daughter has serious injuries. I will provide you with the medical report and photographs, but I demand that a statement be taken right here. The officer nodded. Understood. Please cooperate. They took notes, took photos, asked about every detail. From the balcony I watched, with my heart still racing but without the initial panic. I could clearly see that the tables had turned. Carol changed her tune from screaming to whining. Officer, it's just a family matter, a little lesson for the daughter-in-law. A policeman cut her off. Discipline does not include causing physical injury. Say less. Jake stepped forward, lowering his voice. Officer, my wife really just fell. Alex said coldly. Shut up. When they were beating her, you stood outside the door. Now you say she fell. Jake lowered his head, not answering. Finally, the police required Carol and Jake to accompany them to the station. As they were being put in the car, Carol turned and looked up at the balcony with an expression of hatred and panic. Sarah, remember this, it's not over. Alex stood firm, his voice sharp. You should worry about yourself first. The car drove away, leaving only the curious stares of the neighbors. The door to our apartment closed and the silence became strangely heavy. Sarah sat on the sofa as if her strength had been drained. She was trembling. But in her eyes there was a new glint. It wasn't just fear anymore. Mom, I was wrong. I sat beside her and hugged her. You were wrong, not to trust your gut and not to trust me, but you weren't wrong to choose to protect yourself. Sarah nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. Alex pulled up a chair and sat in front of us, his voice grave. Sarah, listen to your father. This morning we're going to do 3 things. She looked up. 3 things. First, go to a forensic doctor to have your injuries officially documented. Second, file a report for domestic violence. And third, file for divorce. The last phrase made Sarah freeze. Divorced dad Alex looked at her intently. Do you want to go back to that house? Sarah was silent. I saw her hands trembling. It's good to be scared. It's the right thing. A place that makes you scared is not a home, I added, Sarah. I once endured thinking it was for the good of the family. The result was that I lost 10 years of my life. I don't want you to repeat my story. My daughter looked at me, then at Alex. After a long moment, she nodded. I'll do whatever you say. That morning, the New York sky clouded over and it began to rain. Heavy drops fell on the gray asphalt. we took Sarah to the hospital for the medical examination. When the doctor lifted her shirt, the purple marks and bruises were so extensive that both Alex and I had to look away. The doctor shook his head. She's received multiple blows with great force. There are clear signs of severe abuse. Alex signed the report, his hand trembling slightly. Afterward, we went to the police station. Sarah recounted everything that had happened, every detail, every slap, every threat. Whenever she paused, I squeezed her hand tightly. When she signed the police report, she stared at the paper for a long time. "Mom, from this moment on, I'm not Jake's wife anymore, am I?" I stroked her hair. "You're still yourself. You've just escaped a trap." At noon, we went to the courthouse to file for a unilateral divorce. Jake wasn't there, but his lawyer had sent a request for reconciliation. Alex read it and smiled coldly. Reconciliation. After giving his wife 40 slaps, do they think the law is a joke? The lawyer looked at us, his voice restrained. "The other party wishes to negotiate." "There's nothing to negotiate." Alex cut in. "Divorce. My daughter's assets remain as they are. Furthermore, we will be seeking compensation for emotional distress." I looked at Sarah. She took a deep breath and said clearly, "I agree with my dad." That afternoon, my phone rang non-stop, always from unknown numbers. When I picked up, Carol's hoarse, threatening voice boomed. "You've really done it now, haven't you? You dared to call the police," I answered calmly. "You should speak through your lawyer. Don't think that having your ex-husband behind you means you'll win anything." I hung up. My hand was shaking, but I felt a strange sense of relief. I knew the road ahead would be full of obstacles, but we had already crossed the most important line. That night, Sarah was in bed and I sat beside her. She whispered, "Mom, if only I had listened to you that day." I shook my head. There are no if-onlys. The important thing is that you've woken up now. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but in our small apartment for the first time in days, I felt a fragile peace. I knew Jake's family wouldn't give up easily, and I also knew that the real storm was yet to come. That night, Sarah slept in fits and starts. She would fall asleep for a while, and then wake up with a start, her back drenched in sweat. I sat by her bed with my hand on her shoulder, and as soon as she moved, I would notice. Each time I'd pat her gently and whisper, "It's okay, Mom's here." But I understood that while the wounds on the skin can heal, the scars on the soul are not so easily erased. Around midnight, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered, "Hello." There was a brief silence, then a man's deep, cold voice. "Is this Sarah's mother?" "It is. I'm the lawyer for the Wright family." I let out a bitter laugh. "At this hour? Why are you calling?" "The other party wishes to speak privately to prevent this matter from escalating." I looked at my daughter, who was sleeping fitfully. "There is nothing to discuss in private. Everything will be settled before the law." The man's voice softened. "You should reconsider. If this goes further, Sarah's reputation will also be affected." I gripped the phone. "My daughter's reputation was trampled by you on her wedding night. Don't use the word reputation to threaten me." I hung up without waiting for a response. Less than 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time, it was Jake's number. I hesitated but ended up answering. "Ma'am," his voice was hoarse. "Could you let me speak to Sarah? I just want to apologize." I took a deep breath. "You have no right. I know I messed up, but my mother." I cut him off. "You messed up not because of your mother, but because you stood by and watched while others beat your wife." The other end went silent. "Sarah is not going to talk to you. From now on, everything goes through the lawyers." I hung up and turned off my phone. In that moment, I noticed my hand was shaking, not from fear, but from rage. The next morning, Alex returned early with a thick stack of papers in his hand. He placed it on the table with a serious expression. "The other side's lawyer has started spreading rumors." "What rumors? That Sarah left the house of her own accord, that it was just a small argument over money, that his family never abused her." I let out a bitter laugh. "They have no shame." Alex nodded. "And that's not all. They're implying that Sarah married for money, and when she didn't get what she wanted, she made all of this up." Sarah, who was standing in her bedroom doorway, heard everything. Her face turned pale. "Dad, are they saying that about me?" Alex looked at his daughter, his gaze softening. "Don't worry about it. Those who have done nothing wrong have nothing to fear." But I knew those words weren't enough. Public opinion is a double-edged sword. It can save a person or destroy them. At noon, the neighbors started whispering. Coming back from the market, I overheard some women on the corner commenting, "They say that girl just married, and she's already left her husband." Who knows who's right, but what an ugly mess. I walked past them without saying a word, but my heart ached. Sarah had already suffered enough. I didn't want people's wagging tongues to hurt her more. That afternoon, Alex proposed, "We need to take the initiative." How? By making the truth public. I looked at him. "Do you really want to magnify this?" He nodded. "If we don't, they'll twist the story. In people's eyes, Sarah will always be the guilty one." Sarah was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke in a low but firm voice. "I don't want to hide anymore. I haven't done anything wrong." Hearing her, I felt a lump in my throat. Alex immediately called the lawyer to prepare all the documentation, the medical report, the photos of her injuries, the police statements, the threatening messages. That night, when everything was ready, Alex posted a statement on social media. No drama, no sensationalism, just the raw truth. My daughter was the victim of a brutal assault on her wedding night. She received 40 slaps for refusing to sign over an asset that belongs to her. We have turned to the justice system to protect her. As soon as it was posted, my phone began to vibrate non-stop. Messages, calls, both of support and curiosity. In just 1 hour, the post had been shared hundreds of times. Comments poured in. "How can anyone be so cruel? Beating your wife on her wedding night is intolerable. Stay strong, girl. You're brave." I read them, and tears fell. Not of pain, but because for the first time I felt that my daughter was not alone. But that same night, an anonymous account sent me a message. "Don't think that posting those things means it's over." I froze. Alex saw the message and his face darkened. "They've started with threats." "I'm scared." He put a hand on my shoulder. "Don't be afraid. From now on, we don't back down." Sarah, who was standing behind us, had heard everything. She came over and took both of our hands. "I don't want to stay hidden in the darkness anymore. If they want a war, they'll have one." Seeing the look in my daughter's eyes at that moment, I realized she was no longer the fragile young woman who had returned home in a blood-stained wedding dress. Slowly, she was learning to stand tall. Night fell. I sat alone on the balcony. The city was still lit up, the traffic, noisy, as if no tragedy had occurred. I understood that the coming storm would be even greater, but this time I was not alone, and neither was my daughter. I knew that tomorrow the Wright family would not stand idly by, and that the real confrontation had just begun. The next morning, I woke up at the crack of dawn. I had barely slept. The phone on the table vibrated constantly with notifications, but I didn't dare look at it right away. I feared the cruel words, the merciless judgments. However, when I opened it, the first things I saw were messages of support. "Ma'am, I read your story and my heart aches. Be strong, don't let them intimidate you." I let out a sigh, but before I could calm down, Alex's phone rang. He answered, his face turning serious. "Yeah, I know. Let me handle it." Hanging up, he turned to me. "Last night's post is spreading very fast." How fast? I didn't dare ask. "The other side has already reacted." "What have they done?" "They've published a response saying Sarah left home in the middle of the night over a money dispute and that she faked the injuries to extort them." I clenched my fists. The nerve. Sarah came out of her room. She had heard everything. She was pale, but her voice was strangely calm. "Dad, Mom, I don't want to hide anymore. If they're saying that about me, I want to respond." I turned to her. "Are you sure? Public opinion can be very harsh." Sarah nodded. "If I stay silent, they'll say silence is consent. I haven't done anything wrong." Alex looked at his daughter for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. But we'll do it with the truth and with evidence." Less than an hour later, social media was on fire. The Wright family's post was being shared with all sorts of comments. There were people defending Sarah, but others threw cold remarks. "You're supposed to air your dirty laundry in private. Why bring it to the internet? Who knows, maybe it's all about money." I read them and my hands trembled. I wanted to reply, to scream about everything my daughter had suffered, but Alex stopped me. "Don't be rash. An emotional reaction will only give them more ammunition." At noon, the lawyer called. "The other party's family is under pressure. Their company is starting to be investigated." Investigated. They're in real estate, but their finances aren't clean. "This story has attracted too much attention." Alex smiled grimly. Just as I expected. That afternoon, Sarah decided to write her own post. Not to attack, but to tell her story. She sat at her laptop and typed slowly. I stood behind her, my heart clenching with every line. I am Sarah. I thought that by enduring I could save my marriage. She told of her wedding night, the slaps, the fear of being locked in her husband's indifference. No embellishments, no insults, just the truth. When the post went up, I held my breath. Within minutes, hundreds of comments. Reading this gives me chills. A husband who stays silent is worse than one who hits. This girl is so brave. But there were also malicious comments. Where's the proof? You can't just believe one side. Sarah read them, her eyes red. I took her hand. You don't have to respond to everyone. Alex handed her his phone. It's time to show the evidence. The lawyer published the medical report, the photos of the bruises, the police report. Everything clear, irrefutable. The atmosphere on social media changed rapidly. Those who had doubted fell silent. Apologies started to appear. Sorry for judging you so quickly. This is unbelievable. In the evening, I received a call from an unknown number. Is this Sarah's mother? Yes. I'm a journalist. We'd like to verify the information. I looked at Alex. He nodded. We are willing to talk, but we will only tell the truth. The article was published late that night without sensational headlines. It simply recounted the case from a legal perspective. But it was enough. The next morning, the name of the rights company appeared on several forums. People began to unearth delayed projects, bank debts. Alex's phone rang. It was Jake. Sir, what you're doing is driving my family to ruin. Alex replied coldly. It was you and your mother who drove my daughter to ruin first. I beg you, let me see Sarah. Alex looked at his daughter. Sarah shook her head. I have nothing more to say to him, Alex said sharply. Talk to the lawyers. After he hung up, Sarah sat there dazed. Mom, I didn't think it would go this far. I hugged her. You only told the truth. If the truth destroys them, it's not your fault. That night, a heavy storm broke. Standing by the window, I watched the water pour down. I had mixed feelings. I was hurting for my daughter, but I was also afraid. Afraid that when the media storm passed, the scars on her heart would still be there. Alex came over. Do you regret making it public? I shook my head. If I could go back, I'd do the same thing. He sighed. 10 years ago, I didn't defend you. This time, I couldn't leave my daughter alone. I said nothing. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside, for the first time in days, I felt a slight sense of relief. I knew public opinion was on our side, but I also knew the Wright family wouldn't give up, and that cornered their reaction would be even more violent. 3 days after the story went viral, the atmosphere at home was tense. The phone rang constantly, people calling to offer support, others out of curiosity, some with a mix of pity and morbid fascination. I stopped answering most calls, only maintaining contact with the lawyer and the police. Sarah spoke little, but she was eating better and sleeping more soundly. Though her gaze would often drift into the distance, I knew that on the outside she was calmer, but inside there were still many broken pieces to mend. That morning, Alex received a long call. When he hung up, he placed the phone on the table, looking thoughtful. The Wrights are starting to crumble. How so? The bank is calling in their debts. Partners have broken contracts. Shareholders are demanding explanations. I remained silent. I felt no joy or satisfaction, just a deep exhaustion. So what will they do now? Alex looked at me. They'll try everything to silence this story. And the quickest way, he paused, is to retaliate. He had barely finished speaking when the doorbell rang. I jumped. Sarah, who was in her room, came out too. The three of us looked at each other. I went to the door. Standing before me was a middle-aged man, well-dressed with an exhausted face. Good morning. I'm Victor Wright, Jake's father. I stared at him. What do you want? He sighed. May I come in and talk? Alex stepped forward. If you've come to apologize and resolve this through legal channels, we're willing to listen. Victor nodded and entered. Upon seeing Sarah, he stopped, a fleeting expression of remorse on his face. Sarah, I'm so sorry. My daughter stood still, not responding. Victor turned to Alex and me. At this point, I'm not going to defend my wife or my son. I just hope we can stop this. Alex crossed his arms. Stop it. How? A quick amicable divorce. We're willing to pay compensation. I pulled up a chair. How much? Victor swallowed. 25000. Caller 25000. Alex let out a cold laugh. 25000 for 40 slaps. For a wedding night from hell, Victor flushed. We're in a very difficult situation as well. I looked him in the eye. That difficulty is of your own making. My daughter is not a sacrifice. Victor was silent for a long time, then lowered his voice. Then what do you want? Alex answered without hesitation. An immediate divorce, Sarah's assets untouched. In addition, compensation for emotional distress in accordance with the law. And one more condition. What condition? A public apology. Victor was stunned. Public, yes, public, acknowledging the assault. Silence filled the room. Victor lowered his head, his hands trembling. If I do that, the company will go under completely. Alex looked at him, his voice cold but clear. Then you should think about how much longer your company will last if this drags on. Suddenly, Sarah spoke. I don't want your money. Alex and I turned to look at her. I just want the divorce, my freedom, and for no one from your family to ever appear in my life again. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. Victor looked at her for a long time, then nodded. All right. I'll convince my wife. Alex stressed. It's not about convincing. It's about forcing her. After Victor left, Sarah sat down, sighing. Mom, I never want to see them again. I stroked her hair. I know. It's almost over. But I was too optimistic. That same afternoon, a video suddenly appeared online. In it, Carol was crying uncontrollably in front of the camera, her face haggard. I'm Sarah's mother-in-law. I want to clarify that I did not give her 40 slaps. We just had an argument, a minor scuffle. In her anger, she self-harmed to then slander my family. Watching the video, my hands turned to ice. Sarah beside me was trembling from head to toe. Mom, they're saying Alex turned off the video. They're playing their last card. The lawyer called right after. They want to shift public opinion to the idea that Sarah self-harmed. That's ridiculous, I said, laughing bitterly. Ridiculous, but dangerous. If we don't react in time, some people will believe it. Alex nodded. Prepare the medical reports. I want everything out in the open. That night, Sarah didn't eat a bite. She curled up in bed. Mom, what if people believe them? I took her hand. Listen to me. The truth may walk slowly, but it never disappears. Alex came in. Tomorrow, I'll present more evidence and request an urgent protective order from the court. Sarah looked at him, her eyes red. I'm so tired. He sat in front of her. I know. Just a little more effort. Outside, dark clouds gathered, and the wind blew in gusts. I felt a great storm was coming. The Wright family was cornered, and a wounded beast is the one that attacks most fiercely. I only hoped that after this storm, my daughter could finally walk towards the light. Carol's video spread faster than I could have imagined. In a single night, it appeared in every group and forum. Some pitied her, others were skeptical, and quite a few started criticizing Sarah. I read the comments, and my stomach twisted into a knot. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Daughters-in-law these days are a real handful. Sarah read a couple of lines and burst into tears. She hugged a pillow, curled up just like the first night she came home in her blood-stained dress. Mom, I'm exhausted. I don't want to look at the internet anymore. I sat beside her, holding her tight. You don't have to read anything. You just need to rest now. But saying it was easy. The reality was that public opinion showed no mercy. The next morning, when I opened the door to get a delivery, I was met with the curious stares of some neighbors. No one said anything, but those looks weighed on me. Alex arrived earlier than usual with another thick folder under his arm. The lawyer has prepared everything. Prepared what? The counterattack, he said concisely. I knew we couldn't just keep defending ourselves. We went to the lawyer's office. Sarah wore a cap and a mask, but someone still recognized her. She lowered her head and walked quickly. I held her hand, feeling it was ice cold. The lawyer spread the documents on the table. This is the complete forensic report. The bruises show repeated external impact. It's impossible for her to have inflicted them on herself. Alex nodded. Publish it all, the lawyer continued. We also have the recording of Carol's threatening phone call. I was stunned. What call? The one from the other day when she insulted you, demanding you drop the complaint. I remembered. It turned out the lawyer had activated automatic call recording. And there's more. The lawyer opened another file. We have the statement of a hotel employee where the wedding was held. They heard screaming and crying from the bridal suite. Sarah looked up, her eyes wide. Really? The lawyer nodded. Someone contacted us voluntarily. They couldn't stand to see how Carol was slandering you. I let out a long sigh. For the first time in days, I saw the light more clearly. In the afternoon, the lawyer arranged a press conference, but it was highly controlled. No emotional interviews, no lamentations, just the presentation of evidence. Alex made a brief statement. We do not wish to turn a private matter into a public spectacle, but when the truth is distorted, we are forced to speak. Then the lawyer presented the forensic report, the photos, the recording, the witness statements. The press room fell silent. I saw some journalists frown, others sigh. The news was published within hours. This time the headlines were unambiguous. Irrefutable proof of wedding night assault. Public opinion took a dizzying turn. The comments that doubted Sarah disappeared, replaced by a wave of outrage. To slander the victim in this way is unheard of cruelty. And that mother-in-law still has the nerve to cry on camera. Carol's video was dismantled, every sentence analyzed, every inconsistency pointed out. Sarah in her room read the news for a long time. She was silent, and then suddenly put down her phone. Mom, I feel lighter. I looked at her. Because you've told the truth. In the evening, Alex's phone rang. He answered, his face turning icy. Yes, all right. Hanging up, he looked at me. They've summoned Carol for questioning again. This time, they're considering pre-trial detention for further investigation. I felt no joy, just a strange emptiness. And Jake summoned as a person of interest. Sarah heard this and trembled slightly. Mom, I don't want to see him. You won't have to, Alex said firmly. That night, Sarah and I were in the kitchen together. I made her a light soup. She ate slowly, spoonful by spoonful. Mom, she said, if I hadn't come home that day, if I had just endured it. I put down my spoon and looked her in the eye. Sarah, listen to me. If you hadn't run away that day, you might not be sitting here today. She started to cry, but this time silently. I hugged her, patting her back. I don't need you to be strong. I just need you to be alive and safe. Outside, night fell over the illuminated city. In the dim light, I saw my daughter slowly relax. Late that night, the lawyer sent a message. The Wright family was requesting a private meeting to renegotiate. Alex read it and smiled grimly. They're starting to get scared. Are we going? I asked. He looked at me. We'll go. But this time the terms will be different. Sarah looked up. I don't want to give in anymore. Alex put a hand on her shoulder. It's not about giving in. It's about ending it. I understood that the battle was reaching its decisive moment. Those who were once aggressive were now showing their panic. And with the truth on our side, I knew the day Sarah would be truly free was not far off. The meeting was set for the next morning at the lawyer's office. I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but because my mind kept replaying images, the torn wedding dress, the bruises, the empty look in my daughter's eyes. Remembering her wedding night, I promised myself that no matter what this time, I wouldn't let Sarah give an inch. In the morning, Sarah got up before me. She was wearing a simple white shirt and dark pants, her hair pulled back. When she looked at me, she smiled faintly. Mom, I'm okay. I nodded. Just hearing her say that made me feel strong enough to leave the house. The lawyer's office was on a busy street. When we arrived, the Wright family was already there. Victor, the father, sat at the head of the table looking tired, his shoulders slumped. Beside him was Jake. In just a few days, he had lost a noticeable amount of weight, with deep, dark circles under his eyes, and no trace of his former confidence. Carol was not there. Their lawyer broke the ice. We are here to find a solution that will end all of this peacefully. Alex looked at him intently. Peace must be based on truth. There was a tense silence. Victor cleared his throat. This has gone too far. I don't want my son or my family to be embroiled in this scandal any longer. Alex nodded. Neither do we. That's why the terms are very clear. Our lawyer placed a draft agreement on the table and slid it towards them. First, an immediate mutually agreed upon divorce, with no reconciliation attempts or delays. Second, the assets in Sarah's name remain intact without dispute. Third, compensation for emotional distress according to the legal framework. And fourth, the Wright family must issue a written public apology acknowledging the assault. Victor read each line, his face tightening. A public apology, it's necessary. Alex replied coldly. It's the price for slandering a victim. Jake kept his head down, his hands clasped together. Sir, I'm sorry. Sarah looked him straight in the eye. For the first time since this all began, she spoke. What are you sorry for? Jake looked up, his lips trembling. For not protecting you. Sarah gave a very slight nod. You're right. But an apology doesn't erase what happened. She turned to me, then to Alex. I'm not asking for anything else. I just want to end this, the opposing lawyer whispered with Victor. A moment later, the man sighed. We accept the terms, but we ask to reduce the compensation. Alex looked at our lawyer. What's the offer? 50,000. And Hom. Right. And Hom. And Hammond. And Hammond. And Hammond. Hal tres null. Alex shook. Hiss. Hid. 800. Null. Not $1 less. Victor closed his eyes as if weighing the decision for a long time. Finally, he nodded. Agreed. The agreement was signed that same morning. As the pen touched the paper, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Sarah sat there staring at Jake's signature. It was over. I took her hand. A part of it, honey. A part of it is over. That same afternoon, the divorce agreement was filed. The lawyer told us the process would be quick given the strong evidence. I looked at Sarah and saw that her eyes no longer held panic but a very human, very real exhaustion. That night, I made a simple dinner. Sarah ate slowly, but she finished everything. Suddenly, she said, Mom, I feel like I just woke up from a long nightmare. I smiled. All nightmares have an end. Alex's phone rang. He answered, nodding repeatedly. Yes, I know. Thank you. After hanging up, he turned to us. Carol has signed the apology. They'll publish it tomorrow. Sarah looked somewhat surprised. Really? Really? She said nothing more. I understood that for her, that apology was no longer that important. What she needed was peace. The next morning, the apology was published. No tears, no victimhood, just a cold text acknowledging the assault and apologizing for the false information that was spread. The public reaction was intense, but this time no one blamed Sarah. I saw my daughter read the news very quickly and then turn off her phone. Mom, I don't want to read anymore. You don't have to, honey. The following days, everything proceeded as agreed. The compensation was transferred, and the divorce proceedings were completed ahead of schedule. With the final decree in her hand, Sarah stood silently for a long time. Mom, I'm free, right? I hugged her. Yes, honey, you're free. In the evening, Alex was about to leave. He paused at the door and looked at Sarah. Dad, I'm sorry. If I had been stronger in the past, maybe you wouldn't have had to go through so much. Sarah shook her head. Don't say that, Dad. You came when I needed you most. Alex nodded, his eyes red. When the door closed, Sarah and I sat in the living room. Outside, the city was still noisy, but inside our home, for the first time in a long time, a pleasant silence reigned. I knew the legal battle was almost over, but Sarah's healing journey had only just begun, and I would be by her side step by step until she smiled for real again. After the divorce was finalized, our small home settled into a strange quiet. The incessant calls, the threatening messages, the prying eyes of others all gone. Everything seemed to be covered by a thin layer of calm that brought me as much relief as it did a sense of emptiness. Sarah spent more time at home in no hurry to return to work. Her doctor had recommended she rest to recover physically and mentally. I didn't pressure her. I knew some wounds need time. In the mornings, I'd get up early to make her breakfast. She would sit across from me, eating slowly, sometimes staring out the window. She spoke little, but she no longer cowered. Her gaze was still sad, but the panic was gone. Mom, she said, one day I want to clean out my room. I smiled. Getting rid of old things, she nodded. I don't want to see that suitcase I came back with ever again. We started cleaning at noon. I helped her sort through her things. Items bought for the wedding, new clothes, gifts, still with their tags on. Everything went into boxes. There were things Sarah would hold for a long time before placing them in a box. I didn't rush her. I let her make the decisions. Sarah held a small box containing her wedding ring. She looked at it for a moment and then handed it to me. You keep this for me, Mom. I took it without asking. I knew there are some things that need to be kept not out of attachment, but because you're not yet ready to let them go completely. In the afternoon, Alex stopped by. He brought fruit and some documents. I need to talk to you about something. Sarah looked up. What is it, Dad? Alex sat down and said calmly, I've had a manager arrange for legal protection for your condo. From now on, no one can touch it without your signature. Sarah sat motionless. Dad, I don't want you to worry about anything else related to my assets. It's your right. Sarah nodded, her eyes red. Thank you, Dad. Alex looked at her, his voice gentle. You don't have to thank me. I'm just doing what I should have done a long time ago. After dinner, Alex left. At the door, he looked at me. You've been through a lot. I shook my head. The important thing is that she's through the worst of it. He nodded without another word. That night, Sarah slept soundly until morning. Hearing her steady breathing was a huge relief. I sat in the living room, made myself a cup of tea, and thought about the journey we had taken. It had all been so fast, so intense. Even I hadn't had time to process my own emotions. A few days later, Sarah suggested we go out. I want to take a walk. We chose a small coffee shop near our home, quiet, not too noisy. Sarah sat by the window watching people pass by. Mom, she said, I'm afraid of running into someone I know. I placed my hand on hers. If you run into someone, you don't have to explain anything. You've done nothing wrong. She nodded and took a deep breath. A waitress brought our drinks. She looked at Sarah a little longer than usual and smiled. Take care of yourself. Just that simple phrase made Sarah freeze. When the waitress left, my daughter lowered her head, and a few silent tears fell. Mom, I didn't expect. I squeezed her hand. Not everyone is heartless. The following days, Sarah started to resume old habits. She went for walks with me in the morning, read in the afternoon, watched movies at night. One day, she laughed at a scene in a movie, and then startled as if she couldn't believe she was capable of laughing. I looked at her, my heart aching. One night she asked me, Mom, do you regret anything? About what? About letting me make so many of my own decisions. I thought for a moment. I don't regret it. I only regret that I wasn't firm enough to get you out of there sooner. Sarah shook her head. If I hadn't gone through it, maybe I never would have woken up. She paused and added, I don't believe in marriage like I used to. I looked at her without arguing. You don't have to believe in it now. You just have to believe in yourself. Sarah smiled, a shy but real smile. A few weeks later, she received an email from her old company, asking when she could return. She thought about it for a long time and then told me, Mom, I want to quit my job. Why? I want to change. I want to start over. I nodded. If that's what you need, I support you. Sarah started looking for short-term courses. She said she wanted to study design, something she had always liked but gave up for family life. I saw a different light in her eyes, not excitement but hope. One night, while we were watching TV, her phone vibrated. She looked at the screen and tensed up. It's Jake. I looked at her. Do you want to answer? She was silent for a few seconds, then shook her head. No. I have nothing to say to him. She declined the call and put the phone aside. I let out a long sigh. In that moment, I knew that Sarah had truly crossed a threshold, not because she had forgotten, but because she had chosen not to go back. Night fell. Lying in bed, I listened to the crickets outside. I no longer felt the weight from before. I understood that my daughter's road was still long, but at least she was no longer trapped in pain. And I, as her mother, only hoped I could accompany her slowly, firmly to make up for the days when she was lost in the darkness. Sarah began her new days with a quiet routine. The rushed mornings and the pressure to prove anything to anyone were gone. She would get up early, make me a pot of tea, and go out on the balcony to breathe in the fresh air. I would watch her from behind, and notice her back was straighter, her steps more confident, though sometimes she would stand still for a long time as if in dialogue with herself. Mom, she said, one day I've enrolled in the design course. I smiled. When do you start next week? Her voice no longer trembled, and that reassured me. On Sarah's first day of class, I didn't go with her. She said she wanted to go alone. Before leaving, she paused at the door and looked at me. Mom, if I'm back late, it's okay. Do your own thing. She nodded and closed the door. I stared at the door for a while, feeling a mix of worry and pride. At noon, I received a text from her. Mom, the class is great. I don't feel out of place. I read it and my eyes welled up. The following days, Sarah was busier. She studied, did assignments, researched. Sometimes she stayed up late, but when she came out of her room, I no longer saw an exhausted face, but a different kind of focus. One night she sat next to me and opened her laptop. Mom, look at this. I looked at the screen. I didn't understand much about lines and colors, but I saw how her eyes shone as she talked about her project. I don't get much of it, but I can see you're very serious about this. Sarah smiled. I feel that way too. That smile wasn't radiant, but it was sincere. Meanwhile, the echo of the past hadn't completely vanished. Sometimes an acquaintance would ask casually, "Hey, how's your daughter?" I would answer curtly, "It's all in the past now." Sarah no longer avoided those questions. She stayed silent when necessary, spoke clearly when she wanted to. I saw she was learning to set boundaries. One afternoon, Alex stopped by. He brought some documents, but we didn't talk about work. He looked at Sarah and asked, "How are you feeling, Sarah?" She thought for a moment. "I'm still scared sometimes, but I don't feel useless anymore." Alex nodded. "That's enough." I looked at the father and daughter and felt an inner peace. Perhaps the fractures of our past were healing in a different way, not by going back, but through understanding. One night, Sarah stood on the balcony for a long time. I brought her a glass of warm milk. "Mom," she said, "I still dream about that night sometimes." I stood beside her. "And what do you do?" "I wake up with my heart racing, but I don't cry anymore. I tell myself it's over." I took her hand. "That's healing, honey. It's not forgetting, it's facing it." Sarah nodded, her gaze distant. "I used to think I was weak. And now I know it's not wrong to be weak. What's wrong is letting others trample on you." I added nothing more. I knew she had learned her own lesson. One day, Sarah received an email from a classmate inviting her to a small project. She showed it to me. "Mom, they've asked me to collaborate." I smiled. "And what do you think I feel?" "Useful." That word struck my heart because I remembered how useless she had felt before. The following nights, Sarah started going out more. Sometimes to study with a group, sometimes just for a walk. Every time she came back, she would share little anecdotes. I no longer felt that old anxiety. Once Sarah asked me, "Mom, have you ever regretted getting a divorce?" I thought about it for a long time. I've felt sad at times, but I've never regretted it. Why? Because through that decision, I learned to stand on my own 2 feet, and because of that, I was strong enough to protect you. Sarah looked at me, her eyes red. "I wish I could be as strong as you." I smiled. "You already are. You're just starting to realize it." At the end of the month, Sarah finished her first course. She brought home a small certificate and placed it on the table. "Mom, I did it." I hugged her. "You did it a long time ago." That night I lay awake thinking. I thought about our journey from panic and fear to calm and hope. I understood that healing is not a destination, but a long road with progress and setbacks. But as long as Sarah didn't remain stuck in the pain, that was enough. The next morning, Sarah told me something that surprised me. "Mom, I want to move out and live on my own." I looked at her. "Are you sure I want to try?" "I want to be independent." "But close to you." I nodded, my heart torn between emotion and pride. "All right. Whenever you need me, I'll be here." Sarah smiled. A serene smile with no trace of fear. I knew my daughter was truly opening a new chapter in her life. Sarah's decision to move out came sooner than I expected. She didn't say it in a fit of emotion, or as a way of escaping. She said it in a very calm voice, as if she had thought about it for a long time. "Mom, I want to be responsible for my own life." I looked at her with a mix of concern, love, and pride. "Where are you thinking of living?" "I found a small apartment near the design school not too far from here." I nodded. "All right. But one thing." Sarah looked at me. "When you need me, I will always be here." She smiled warmly. "I know." We started looking at apartments that weekend. Sarah wasn't looking for luxury, just a clean, safe place with good light. She stood for a long time on the balcony of a small apartment on the 6th floor, looking out at a tree-lined street. "Mom, I like this place." "Why?" "Because I feel like I can breathe here." I understood that after everything, what she needed most wasn't comfort, but a sense of security. The day she signed the lease, she read every clause herself. I stood by her side without intervening. I saw she was learning to protect herself, with clarity, not fear. That evening, we moved her things. There wasn't much, a few boxes of clothes, books, and a small plant that Sarah loved. She picked up each item and packed it carefully. "Mom," she said, "I'm not taking the ring." I nodded. "You can leave it if you want." Sarah put it in a drawer and closed it. No tears, no hesitation, just a serene ending. On moving day, Alex came to help too. He didn't say much, just carried boxes and gave her some advice. Before leaving, he looked at Sarah and said in a grave voice, "If anything happens, you call me." Sarah nodded. "I will." When the door to her new apartment closed, I stood in the small living room looking around. Everything was empty, but the sun was streaming in. I turned to my daughter. "How do you feel?" "A little scared." I smiled. "It's normal to be scared. But you're not alone." The first few days, Sarah wasn't used to it. She would call me every night to tell me trivial things. "Mom, my food turned out salty." "Mom, the living room light is flickering." I listened patiently. I knew it wasn't weakness, but her way of adjusting to independence. After a week, the calls became less frequent. Sarah was busier. She started taking on small design jobs. She would tell me via text, "Mom, I got my first client." I read it with immense joy. One afternoon, I went to visit her. The apartment already had more plants and some pictures on the walls. Sarah made me tea. She seemed different, more put together and confident. "You look better." She looked at me. "I feel that way too." We sat in silence for a moment. Suddenly she said, "Mom, someone messaged me wanting to get to know me." I wasn't surprised. "And how do you feel about it? I'm in no rush. We're just talking as friends." I nodded. "You don't have to prove anything." Sarah smiled. "I know. I just want to see how far I can open up." That night when I returned to my own home, it felt emptier without her footsteps, without hearing her open her bedroom door. I sat on the sofa and sighed. I missed her, but I wasn't sad. I knew it was a healthy kind of nostalgia. A few days later, I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, is this Sarah's mother?" "Yes, it's Jake." I was silent for a few seconds. "Why are you calling? I just wanted to know if Sarah is okay." His voice sounded exhausted. "You don't need to ask. She's much better without having anything to do with you." There was a silence on the other end. "I'm sorry," I replied slowly. Apologies that come late rarely do any good. I hung up without hesitation. When I told Sarah, she just nodded. "I'm not angry anymore, Mom. I just don't want to go back." I looked at her and felt a great sense of relief. For her, forgiving wasn't about returning. It was about letting go. One night at the end of the month, Sarah called me. "Mom, are you coming over for dinner at my place this weekend?" I smiled. "Are you cooking?" "Yes, I want to invite you." The dinner was simple. A vegetable soup, baked fish dishes she had just learned to make. Sarah, sitting across from me, was smiling more. "Mom," she said, "thank you." "For what?" "For not living my life for me, but always being there when I needed you." I was speechless. "You've grown up." Sarah nodded. "I'm learning to grow up all over again." When I was leaving, I paused at her door and turned to look at her. Sarah was standing there, and the light cast a serene silhouette on her face. I suddenly realized that my daughter had truly left my protection, not through distance, but because she was now strong enough. On my way home, I thought a lot. Perhaps a mother's greatest happiness is not having her children by her side, but seeing them strong enough to walk on their own. Time passed, and with each day Sarah lived on her own, I noticed a change in her. She no longer bit her nails nervously, or looked at the world through a veil of fear. She went to her design classes, participated in small projects, and slowly rebuilt her life from the ground up. One day she read me a message from her phone. "Thanks for your help on the last project. Hope we can collaborate again." "How do you feel?" I asked her. Sarah smiled with a special glint in her eyes. "I feel like I'm worth something." That was a huge change. I remembered how before any difficulty would make her hide, convinced she wasn't capable. But now, she had learned to face challenges. I went to visit her at her apartment. The space no longer seemed empty, but was full of life. Sarah was at her desk with her laptop open. "What are you doing?" "I'm designing a small collection for a boutique." I looked at the screen. Even though I was no expert, I noticed a dedication and professionalism she didn't have before. "You've really changed." She looked up and smiled. "Because I don't want to always be the weak person." I sat beside her and took her hand. "You are so much stronger than you think." But despite her strength, I was still worried. The wounds of the heart don't scar over so easily. A few weeks later, Jake called again. "Ma'am, it's me, Jake. I want to see Sarah." "For what?" "To apologize to her. I've thought about everything a lot." This time, his voice wasn't threatening or evasive. It sounded genuinely regretful. I thought for a moment and replied, "You need to talk to her about that. I don't make her decisions." "Thank you, ma'am." When I told Sarah, she looked at me calmly. "I don't want to see him." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." I remained silent. I understood she was strong enough not to go back to the past. Time went on. Sarah became a woman I was immensely proud of. Work and studies absorbed her. Her small projects gave way to bigger opportunities. Mom, I've been offered a position at a major studio. Really? Yes. They saw my designs and want me to join their team. I looked at her with shining eyes. You did it, Sarah. One night she came home late from work. She sat beside me with a mix of fatigue and determination. Mom, I want to tell you something. I want to go far away. Far away. She nodded. I want to study abroad. I need to learn more to grow. I wasn't surprised. I knew she would do it someday. Where do you want to go? To the United States. I've already been looking into it. I looked into her eyes, feeling her determination. Are you ready? I'm ready. I hugged her. Then go, honey. Don't let anything stop you from chasing your dreams. The day Sarah was preparing to leave, I didn't cry. I understood that no matter how far she was, my heart would always be with her. She would never have to face life alone again. That journey wasn't just a step in her career. It was the ultimate proof that she had emerged from the darkness to find her own light. Sarah's story is not just one of self-discovery, but of all those who have the courage to face the past, to walk forward without looking back. And I, as her mother, will always be the harbor she can return to when she needs an anchor. The day Sarah left, I watched her from the airport window pulling her suitcase. She didn't look back, but I knew her heart was full of emotions. Just a few months ago, she was on the verge of despair, and now she was facing the world. I felt a part of me was leaving, but also that a new faith was being born. Sarah had matured through her falls. The first month, I barely received any calls, just short texts. Mom, I'm fine, don't worry. That was all I needed to hear. A month later, she sent me a painting she had done. Her first piece in an art class. It was simple, but it conveyed a freshness and a light that reflected her new way of seeing herself. One day, she called me, her voice full of energy. Mom, they've offered me a real job. A job, yes, at a big design studio in New York. They want me to join their team. I smiled, a lump in my throat. You did it, Sarah. I'm so proud. I wanted to thank you, Mom. Without you, I never would have gotten here. Don't thank me, honey. I've just been here for you. The new job wasn't easy, but she didn't give up. She was no longer the girl seeking security, but one who stepped out of her comfort zone in search of opportunities. Shortly before I was to visit her, she called me. Mom, I have a surprise. I signed a permanent contract and I'm going to participate in an international project. When I arrived in New York, her apartment was a creative studio. I love it here, Mom. I saw a completely different Sarah. She was no longer lost or scared. She was a creator. You've made it. She smiled with radiant confidence. I still have a lot to learn, but I feel stronger. That night, having dinner with her, I saw she was no longer the girl who ran away, but a brave and resilient woman, my Sarah. She had an important project the next day, but that night I just wanted to enjoy watching her grow. I knew that whatever she did, I would always be her home. And I had learned from her too, to face difficulties and to start anew. Ours was not an ending, but a new beginning. And I knew we would both keep walking, sometimes through the storm, but always finding the light at the end. Time flew. Sarah had been in New York for over a year, solidifying her career. Her calls were filled with stories about travel friends and creative projects. Yesterday, she called me euphoric. Mom, I've been invited to a major design exhibition in Milan. That's wonderful. You're incredible. I'm so happy. I can't believe it, Mom. Without you, none of this would be possible. I was silent, moved. Those words from a girl who once didn't dare face anything were proof of her strength. What do you have to prepare? Just go. Mom, trust me. I trust you. After the call, I felt at peace. I remembered the dark days and knew that all the suffering had served a purpose. A few days later, she sent me a photo from Milan. She was standing next to one of her pieces, wearing a simple black dress and a smile of serene confidence. It wasn't just a picture. It was her journey from pain to passion. I saved the photo. Even though she was far away, I felt her close. One weekend, I met up with some old friends. One asked me, I heard Sarah is a famous designer in the States, is that right? I smiled and nodded. She's doing things I never even imagined. And you've always supported her, haven't you? I looked at her, confident. Yes, I have always believed in her. I knew that after overcoming so much pain, she would become stronger than ever. A month later, Sarah came home. She was at the door with her suitcase. Her eyes shone more confident than ever. Mom, I'm back. You're back. She hugged me. I wanted to come home for a while. My home is wherever you are. I held her, feeling a deep peace. We had dinner together, watching the golden autumn leaves fall. I knew that no matter how far she flew, we would always have a place to return to. Sarah smiled, looking out the window. Mom, I've never felt as strong as I do now. I've learned to stand on my own 2 feet. I hugged her and no longer felt any worry. My daughter had grown up, and I knew that wherever life took her, she would always stand just as tall.